Welcome, Team Joanna, to another installment of our Q&A Tuesdays, where you guys get to ask your questions for Joanna. If you are not familiar inside our private Facebook group, Joanna the Healer, you will find a thread that is pinned where you are more than welcome to put your questions, your generalized questions, not specific to you personally. And I pull from that thread and ask Joanna your questions. So here we are. Welcome, Joanna.
Welcome, Wendy. Hello, everybody. How is everybody doing?
Anything you need to announce before we get started?
Was I supposed to announce something?
No, I'm just asking.
Okay. Are you waiting for the remember to have fun line?
There we go. All right, guys, we're gonna have fun.
Oh boy, let's see where this goes today.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna kind of dabble in sort of the mental health aspect of stuff. So how do people know whether they're experiencing ascension symptoms versus symptoms from untreated mental health issues?
Wow, that feels like a big question. Let me see if I'm allowed to unpack it on air. So it's interesting because, and this is, I'm not a doctor, so what I'm saying, I don't know if it's true, but what I'm being shown is that in some cases, wow, I wasn't expecting this, that in some cases it's hard to tell. Wow, I was not expecting that. Whoa. It's like there's a very fine line between experiencing another reality and having lost grip on reality. Oh, wow. Just experiencing a new reality versus having lost grip on your reality. My head is having a conundrum here. My head is trying to understand this. It's like they're trying to show me something my brain is incapable of understanding. It's, I've never been faced with information where I was looking at something, but I wasn't understanding what's shown to me. And that's because I don't have, my humanness doesn't have the capability to understand it. Now that makes sense to me because I'm a human. So my level of understanding is purely based from a human experience. But they're saying there's a very fine line between those two.
So
which is interesting because I often, sorry to interrupt you, I often have asked myself, am I going crazy? I've actually said that to my husband before. I said, am I schizophrenic? So I can attest to being in a space where you don't know. So for me personally, okay, maybe that will be helpful. For me personally, I got back to my norm very quickly. So like it didn't stay there. Like I didn't stay in that confusion. But if I had stayed in that confusion for a prolonged period of time, it would feel really weird. Like it would have felt like I've lost it. So perhaps one way to discern if you've gone crazy or not. And first, what I will say, and again, this is personal experience, if you're checking yourself, if you've gone crazy, chances are you haven't gone crazy. In other words, if you have the wits about you to say, wait a second, I'm noticing something is weird. Have I lost it? That part, asking that question, is a very reason-oriented aspect of you. So there's a reasoning going on. So if you have the reasoning capability and you can observe your craziness, then chances are you haven't lost it. That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm trying to observe it as it's being shown to me. And I'm a little uncomfortable because we're getting into some areas that are pretty tricky, right? I'm not a doctor. Right. So I'm talking about things I have really no scientific training in, right? But yeah, if you are observing yourself going quote unquote crazy, and that part of you that is observing is sober, then chances are you haven't lost it. When I say sober, it can see, like it can.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So when you said that you've questioned this yourself, but you quickly got back to, I forget exactly how you put it, but basically like yourself. Can you explain that process?
Let me see if I can bring it back as a memory, because it wasn't that long ago. It was a few months ago. It was it was this year. I remember being in the car, and I was waiting to get in to a store to buy something. And I remember it was a feeling where the best way I can describe it is like two realities melded together. And it's very hard to explain using words if someone has not experienced it. But it's very much like being in two realities at once, where you are aware that you are here, but you're also aware that the here is so much more than what you see. Okay? And to my logical mind, that was very confusing, even though there is a part of me that understands that we are in a certain vibration and we perceive what we perceive based on blah, 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 blah. Even though I cognitively knew that this was a felt perception, it was a body experience. So I remember going, oh my God, have I gone crazy? And all I remember was just to breathe. Breath will take you through anything. Just remember to breathe. And I don't remember if I said something to myself, but I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I probably was saying things to myself like, Joanna, you're not going crazy. This will just pass. So I probably talked myself through it.
Mm.
Okay. Have you had something like that happen?
Yeah, for sure.
When you dipped into two realities?
Well, actually, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to think about that.
You'd know, you'd maybe explain it differently, but you'd know. It's a visceral feeling where the way I experience it, it's like there is this openness to me. It's like I have a body, but I am so much beyond my body. It's like I am experiencing a sensation of just being expanded.
Mm.
That's how I feel it. That's how I perceive it. And then there's the other part of me that's looking at my hands and is human, and the logical part goes, what's happening? What's happening? Right? Because to the logical mind, it doesn't make sense. It's something that is new, not experienced before, and it's a strange feeling. And because of its strangeness, we might have a question going through our heads that goes something like, have I gone crazy? But what you're experiencing is, or at least what I am experiencing in those moments, is me tapping into or shifting into another reality. When it started happening to me, I texted somebody and I actually said, am I going crazy? She was like, no. You used to freak me out at the beginning too. So that's when I knew that I wasn't crazy for sure, because it wasn't happening just to me. Okay. So someone has said this before, and maybe me saying this right now is going to help somebody. Okay. Because we're all essentially are moving into this other reality, which some call it 5D, higher dimension. It's a different vibratory rate. So it'll naturally feel different. It feels expanded. Am I answering a question there? Because I feel like it has legs on its own. Am I?
Yeah, no, it's fine. So what I got when you first started talking was flow.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so the experience of fighting it could actually, if we're going to go with the word crazy, could make you feel crazier. Does that make sense?
It
As
does. And I'm
opposed
also,
to
and
just
I'm, mhm.
just flowing with it. Go ahead.
Well, so there's few things that what you're saying, absolutely correct. One of the things is that because we're not recognizing what it is, we don't know how to deal with it. Okay.
Yeah.
And because we don't recognize it, and we don't know how to deal with it, we get a bit into a panic mode because part of us is thinking, holy shit, what's happening? Right?
Right.
At least that's how it feels to me. Now, I've also had experiences where I felt this immense openness, where I felt so much love that I was walking around and crying. So it hits me in various different ways. And I don't know what it depends on. But generally speaking, it's, well, let's face it, it's disorienting to the 3D person, to the 3D brain, to the 3D construct of who we are in a human body, because it feels weird at first. Okay. It feels like you're walking around very open, being very open. And when it started happening to me, that's actually when it dawned on me, oh, wait a minute. I totally now get it, because the openness was very much in my heart chakra. And then I realized that's what they say when they say 5D is all about the heart. I was like, boom, open heart. And until that moment, I did not realize just how, you could use the analogy, closed I was, because it was just my norm. I guess what I'm saying, I'm realizing what I'm saying right now. That openness can be scary because it's not normally how we operate. And why not? Well, one of the culprits is this friend called fear. When we live in a fear-filled place, we tend to clam up. We tend to close down. We tend to fold in. We tend to put ourselves more in a box. We don't like being vulnerable. We treat vulnerability like an enemy. Is that answering anything there? Because I'm just letting it flow.
So I think I'll come back to that. So do you think there's a connection between I don't like this term, mental disorders and psychic abilities?
Say the question again. Do I think
there is a connection between mental disorders and psychic abilities? Like, I guess the question is really like, are people who experience, I don't like this term, mental disorders,
correct?
Are they more
Correct.
psychically connected?
So I'm not going to tell you what I think, because I don't know what to think. I'm going to refer to my friends, and I hope and pray to God that they know what the hell they're talking about, because I don't know when it comes to this stuff. What they're showing me, it's okay. Wow. I'm really putting myself out there. What they're showing me is not a black and white thing. There's always, so we can't say it's either this or that. It's always somewhere in between. But they're saying, for the most part, in quotation marks, someone who is highly anxious, for example, will have a tendency to be more open to their psychic abilities. And I'm going, why is that? And for some reason, they're showing me it's kind of on the same wavelength.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Now, my 3D brain is not understanding that. So can you explain to me what that means? Because I'm just channeling right now. What does that mean?
I think anxiety, so it's kind of like an out of control high vibration.
I just word the word excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's emitting, well, I know for my experience of anxiety is, as I absorb more energies, that's part of, like being an empath, right? Absorbing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the overwhelm of the absorption of energies manifested itself as anxiety. And so I think
Okay.
when properly harnessed, you can really tap into those, if we're going to call it this, psychic abilities. Does that make sense?
It does, very much. And I'm watching what's trying to be explained to me. They're showing me the mind like a very sharp sword, which can cut through anything. So it can create damage and good, depends on how it's used. And when the mind is fueled by the fear, it has this almost like a jagged feel to it. And that jaggedness, that jagged kind of energy, do you know what I mean when I say that word?
Yep.
Jagged, okay. That is what we apparently term an anxiety, the jaggedness. And that's because the culprit is fear. That's what's fueling the mind. Well, that makes perfect sense, because we're never anxious because it's something really good. Actually, sometimes, yes, we are. Sometimes we can be very anxious about something really good. For example, if we feel that this good thing is something we don't deserve. So interesting topic. And I think this is why. I had a thought this morning, all of a sudden, that I need to change my schedule. And right away, I understood it as it has to do with something that we're going to announce at a very short point, right? And I thought, okay, that makes sense. And what that meant was that there would be certain days where I would not be able to see clients, okay? Because I would be preparing other things. And there was this weird part that came out of nowhere that almost felt guilty that I would not be working 5 or 6 times a week. And I went, what the hell, and where did that come from? And it was really staring me in the face, and I'm going, oh my God, I feel guilty for not working the way our society perceives as work days. I've never been aware of that, not to that extent. And I thought, wow, there's some old shit coming up, excuse my French. So I'm trying to create this wonderful thing going forward, but there's this part of me that says, oh, I'm not sure if you're worthy. We have to deal with that right now. And I don't know how we even got to this point, but yeah, this is what was shown to me this morning. So apparently it's part of the resistance process. And I've been saying to you that I've been feeling a lot of resistance, which I suspect quite a few people do as well. As a matter of fact, I was listening to someone on YouTube who's got like 1 million views. Aaron Dowdy, I think is his name, yes. And I don't normally listen to him. Not that there's anything wrong with him at all, quite the opposite. But yesterday I listened to a video, and he himself said that he knows there's this next step, and he can see it, but it's like he can't get over himself. There's something stopping him. And I'm going, oh, thank God it's not just me. So I know that energy is there. And earlier today, they said, because we're in a time of change, resistance will have a tendency to come up a lot. Resistance is basically some part of you trying to prevent something from happening, right? And we try to prevent things from happening for our own various reasons. And something is happening right now, something really big. We're dropping a lot of baggage. So what I got is that resistance can be used as a tool. And I said, what do you mean? And they showed me that when you allow yourself to look at your resistance as a tool, resistance really allows or forces you to look within, right? And what happens is often we end up discovering those opposing sides that we have within us that are either trying to prevent things from happening or, you know, not helping, right?
Right.
And that thing is called inner conflict. And they're showing me that inner conflict is, okay, this is going to be a big statement. Inner conflict is what creates wars. And I'm going, whoa, how do we just go from micro to macro? Now, I have to think about that as a human, but it makes sense to me because when there is internal conflict, there is less opportunity for inner peace. You've never seen someone fight when they're in peace, have you?
No.
So I feel some big guns are stepping forward right now. Woof. Wow. It's like we really are going to be given the opportunity to show ourselves what we're really made of. And I'm going, oh, that's like a puzzle piece. Very cryptic. And I just heard, you don't understand the power you have. And or we refuse to acknowledge our power for various reasons. For some of us, is because it makes us stand out. Ah, interesting. So when we stand out, we often face a lot of opposition, or so we think, or maybe that's what we expect. So for some of us, there's a fear of not being accepted, not being liked, not being supported. All those fears that prevent us from us being fully open. Those are all things that I feel will be coming up to the surface to be cleared. Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
And as I say this, I see a sky with a whole bunch of clouds, and these clouds are parting.
Mm.
And they say it represents the cloudiness in our minds, the clouds in our heads. Clouding to me symbolizes obstruction from seeing the full view. Because clearly there's sky behind the clouds, right? Beyond the clouds.
Right.
They're saying we're letting go of our humanness. And I'm going, okay, I need more than that. It feels like, and I have no basis of saying this other than what I'm being given, and I'm fully just putting myself out there. It feels like we humans are very needy people, and we need things to go our way. It makes us feel in control. When it doesn't, we freak out. When we freak out, we then cling on to things we should not be clinging into or to. So why is this being said? It's about realizing what your needs are based on your conditioning and how we can satisfy those needs from within. And not being so needy on the outside, let's say for approval.
So you kind of touched on a little bit ago, you didn't call it this, but self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that I've got for you is, how can people overcome issues like depression and self-sabotage?
So they're separating depression from self-sabotage like two different things. They're related for sure, but it's like, I can't talk about them as one, okay?
Yeah,
so,
I couldn't put them together either when I wrote the question, and I wrote it verbatim, so.
So, but that's okay. They're just showing me that I may address it, but right now they want me to address the word self-sabotage. So in order to address it, you first must identify it. Because if you don't identify it, you're not going to be able to address it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And to identify it means to be really real with yourself. What's really going on inside of me? Okay. If we talk about self-sabotage, then at least there is some recognition that one is sabotaging themselves, so there's an awareness, or there is history of self-sabotage, right? So one has to look within what this self-sabotage is all about, right? Self-sabotage is essentially a symptom, okay? And we always know that symptom is not the problem. Well, yes, it is, because we don't like how it feels, but symptom doesn't just happen out of nothing. There is something that causes the symptom, right?
Right.
And we have a tendency to look at the symptomology more so than the cause. Okay. If I can just get rid of this problem, I'll be happy. Well, no, actually, no, because your problem is representative of what's inside of you. And from that, you can't hide, right? So the best and the quickest way to address self-sabotage is first realize you are doing that. And second, go inside and ask yourself, why am I doing, what part of me is pushing this thing away that I've always wanted? What part of me is pushing this person or this situation or this whatever away from me? And identify what part of you that is. And it's usually a child self that feels unloved, undeserving, unworthy, all the wonderful human stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or there's also a fear of not being able to hold on to something. Fear of not being able to hold on to something. Now that is interesting. Fear of not being able to hold on to something. Yeah, it's a legitimate fear, apparently. You know, once you get something and then there's your fear you're not going to be able to make it last.
Right.
That's interesting. So self-sabotage is also about that sometimes, right? But so let's take that as an example. If that's the situation, then that relationship or whatever it is wouldn't be healthy anyways, because it starts from a person needing this person or this situation to be happy. So there is a neediness, right? That doesn't mean that we will not have our needs met. We all have needs, of course. But when we rely too much on something outside of ourselves or someone outside of ourselves, then we essentially shift into being other people than ourselves. Like we're not fully in our power when we do that, right? So identifying what parts of you are sabotaging and why. And then you have to address that part of you that feels unworthy, unloved, whatever that is. And it's generally an inner part of you, an inner child part of you. I'll use that terminology, an inner child part of you. Okay.
I'm getting acceptance.
Big one. As a matter of fact, I have it on my page. Yes, I wrote it down before we started talking. Yeah. And I just heard to accept yourself takes courage. And I'm going, yeah, no shit, it does. And I think it's so ironic. This is my human brain goes, okay, wait a second. Since I am the one that really approves of me, because at the end of the day, what I approve of me or don't approve of me is really what matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I have the power to make the choice to approve of me, why the hell don't I? Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense to you? I'm going, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, I know you don't need to be fixed. You're perfect just the way you are.
The acceptance of that is very difficult for the humans to accept, because we are conditioned to believe that we are somehow broken.
Broken, yeah.
Okay. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Mama used to always say, what's wrong with you? Why can't you be like this, or that? Well, eventually it gets to you that being you is not a good thing. So you start rejecting yourself. And I can go into a whole different topic about rejection and body elements and all that kind of stuff. But that's for another show. Acceptance is crucial. We have wars because we don't accept each other, but that's because we don't accept ourselves. Oftentimes we don't accept ourselves. And this goes back to this internal war, internal conflict.
So how would you suggest, so the other part of the question, which is the depression issue, how can people overcome something like depression?
So they're showing me several things. And again, reminder to people, I am not a doctor. They're having me look at the brain and then the mind. And then they're showing me that the brain does affect the mind, which means the chemical part of the person does affect the mind. So it's not just suppressed emotions. It's not just chemicals. It's obviously a combination of the two. So I feel like I can't, let me just see how do you want me to answer this? Is your question, can depression be treated? Is that a question that you have?
I'm not reading it like that. I'm reading it like whoever was asking the question knows that they have the power to overcome depression, but they don't know how.
I see. Okay. I see that image of somebody trying to lift themselves up. Now think about this for a moment. How can you lift yourself up when you are quote unquote weak? And I'm not saying that being depressed is a weakness, but it absolutely depletes you of vital energy. Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a point of quote unquote weakness, not as an intellectually weak person, but it's a weakness in energy. And as a result, these types of individuals are susceptible to many things. Attracting people who are not healthy for them, it's because it's energy. Okay, so what I'm getting here for this particular person is there's several things that need to be addressed. And one is under the umbrella of inner conflict, but they're also showing me there is some is cortisol produced in the brain?
Yes.
Okay, because they're showing me addressing cortisol levels, and I actually had to think about, are they produced in the brain? So there seems to be a chemical component to it as well. And I feel, at least in this situation, it is best to be addressed from both sides. Okay, so notice they're not saying do this or do that, but I can see where they're going with this. Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In other words, sometimes you can't just help yourself. That's why we have people. Okay, some things we just, it's like you can't save yourself from drowning, can you? If you're drowning, you're not saving yourself, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, there may be this determination, almost stubbornness. I want to do it alone. I want to do it alone. And that often is not a great way to address that. So I'm kind of saying this information, I'm kind of standing on the side. And what I'm really seeing is these beings are very supportive of helping ourselves in various ways. The, let's call it spiritually way, and the you know, the medical way, the scientific way, okay? Sometimes it is a matter of chemical imbalance, right? However, that causes you to shift your thoughts and moods and all that. So it's all interrelated, right? But what I'm getting very strongly is to address it from both sides. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm getting is they said, feeling gray does not make you gray. And I thought, wait a second. So just because someone feels depressed doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. Because we often, yeah. When we're depressed, we're trying to figure, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I mean, I've asked myself that question when I was there. What's wrong with me? Right? It's almost like I'm looking for there's something to be wrong with me so that I have a reason.
Right.
Right? So that's the answer for that question.
So
I don't know if that helped or not, but.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's circle back to, originally I'd asked, you know, how do people know whether they're experiencing ascension symptoms versus symptoms from untreated mental health issues? So let's talk about, before we wrap this up, what are the ascension symptoms?
Oh God, the list is way too long for us to go through. But here are key components. Emotional ups and downs that are very frequent. One day you're up, one day you're down. It's the seesaw effect. Okay, and that can go on for hours or can go on for days. So there could be a prolonged period of time. Okay, I'm hearing the word frequent headaches, especially in the frontal area. Okay, and I feel this more like a pressure from outside in rather than from inside out. Okay, if you have other types of headaches, it does not mean it's not an ascension symptom, but they're saying to me key elements. Key. Ringing or swishing or ringing, high-pitched noises in your, or shifts in the way you perceive with your ear, so your hearing. Okay. Also, it's a felt perception. It's almost like, it's like one part of your head has completely opened up. And in this case, it's shown to me on the right side. And my brain is telling me, yeah, that makes sense because the right side is more the intuitive. It's not the logical. So that feels expanded. So you may actually feel expanded. Once you have that feeling, it's unmistakable. Okay. Feeling emotionally imbalanced is a big one. And also the question, who am I? Finding yourself being dissatisfied with your life, although it's not that all of a sudden you realize you're dissatisfied, but rather you're coming to the point where you can't hide it anymore. It's like you're at the end of, it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore, I'm done. A feeling that there is either some obvious changes need to come through, or it's like this perceived feeling of changes coming, but not knowing what it is, how it's going to come, what it's going to look like. It's just a sense or knowing that something new and something different is on the way. It's a feeling. Okay? And I've heard this from clients. I hear it a lot. They can feel that. They're also showing me like aches and pains. So it could be anything. If you're, and they're showing me like the body is firing from inside out. It's like it's sending these pulses to areas that were either needed help, or essentially the higher frequency energy is going to recalibrate your body, which means if there's anything that is stuck or not working or has been lingering, it's likely to be flared up. It's almost like the higher frequency is pushing out all the unbalances, whether it be emotional, spiritual, physical, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I've also read this, so it doesn't surprise me. It makes sense to me. They're saying, okay, all right. For some people, it's frequent diarrhea. Okay, this is a new one for me. Okay. Now, that does not mean that this is only ascension symptom. There might be other things. You might be eating things, for example, that don't agree with you. But if everything is fine and you're experiencing that, then it's more likely than not an energy shift in your body. Interesting. See what I learned when you just ask a question? I just need to stay open and try not
Exactly.
to come with my judging preconceived ideas, Joanna. Is this right? Is this wrong? I just have to open myself up. It's actually, I'm realizing it's easier than I think. It's easier than I think. So what you were saying at the very beginning, the flow,
Right.
I actually realized this morning how my mind, and I'm assuming most humans, we have a very unruly mind. Our mind is not very disciplined. And we are in charge of our mind. And I'm going, we have not been taught how to use our mind. Our mind runs around like a 5-year-old kid with ADD. And I thought, oh my God, that is so funny, because the other part was some part of me was observing this. So it's almost like I stepped out of myself and I realized, holy shit, my mind is like a scared little kid running around. There's no order here. No wonder my life has been filled with anxiety. But for me, the being all over the place comes from trying to figure out where I belong. And it's deeply, deeply subconscious. So again, I'm saying this for a reason. Somebody out there needs to hear it. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Is this making
close...
sense? Was that making sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I'd love for people to comment when you do listen to this. Do some commenting so that we know kind of how this landed for you guys.
I always try to answer questions, even if there's personal questions. I try to answer. I usually rephrase the question so that everybody can benefit from a question, and right. I'll always ask them to answer in a way that will benefit anyone who's listening, not just the person. So even though the person may be addressed, the message goes beyond than just a personal message. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise. Let us know what else you want to know. I have a feeling we're going to dive deeply into these deep things. Oh, before I go, they were showing me that most of us are in a space where we are stepping outside of our comfort zones. I know you are. I know, I am. And that is, pretty much most people, I would say, that are listening to this. And that represents change. Change is generally not something we look forward to. Even though we want change, the actual act of things shifting, changing, lifting, dropping, that we don't look forward to.
Right.
Because that's the uncomfortable part. That's the part where everything we've relied on in the past has to now go to shit. So we need to find something new. And that's uncomfortable. It's because in some way we're trying to figure out where do I stand on now and what's next? It's almost like one part of our life is ending and another part is beginning, which is true, right? And they made a parallel distinction with this to the image of stepping into a very cold body of water. Have you ever stepped into a cold body of water?
Oh, yeah.
Ah! Right? And the funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but you said the word acceptance. When I was seeing the cold body of water and person stepping in, and it's obviously, oh, the word acceptance came in, which means, yeah, the water is cold, but guess what? Your body will adjust to it.
Mm. Mm.
Right?
Yep.
And I thought there are two places for me, and I would suspect probably for many others, that are the hardest when they're hit by water. It's the abdominal area and my chest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's almost like those two aspects are the most sensitive. Now, if I think about it in terms of energy fields, that's the power center. That's your vulnerability. That's your power center, right? And that is likened to me like sun. So it's heat. So when cold touches the heat, it produces this effect. I don't know how that's relevant or not, but it was just that there's a sensitivity we have here in our stomachs. I don't know if there's a scientific explanation to it or not, but anyway, neither here or there.
All right. Well, thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. And yeah, guys, let us know how
Chat soon.
this landed for you. So
Chat soon, guys.
yeah, see you next time.